Hello everyone, Wolfie here, and today we're doing the first part of the tutorial series for 3D animation in After Effects using the Cinema 4D renderer. Let's go! Again, these are the kind of things we're going to be looking at creating this tutorial, being things like Wooloo, my own animations, and some other cool things like Emerald. And let's start by doing some prerequisites and showing you the basics of 3D. So to begin with, I should probably create a composition with a nice frame rate, 30 FPS, 1080p, and good duration would be about 15 seconds. Okay, we need to create ourselves a shape, so we're going to create a shape layer, and we're going to get ourselves a square, open it up, and I'm just going to set it to 900 by 900. Let me delete my stroke over here. You'll probably just have a white fill if you're using default settings. And I'll set this to be a nice little pink. That'll do, it's a bit desaturated, but that's more than enough. Now I'm going to close it up, and I'm going to open up this, which is the draft 3D option. So you want to go over here in the bottom right where it says Cinema 4D and Classic 3D. If you're using an older version of After Effects, the Cinema 4D option will be in the top right. And that will switch you to the Cinema 4D renderer, which allows you to do more things than the standard one, for example reflections and extrusion through regular shape layers. There are ways you can kind of emulate extrusion, but it's not very nice. So if I open up my geometry options, I can go and increase the extrusion depth, and what that does is if I now open rotation, when I rotate you can see it's a 3D shape. So let me scale that down and just rotate it a bit so you can kind of tell what's going on. And then another basic thing is lighting. So I'm going to add just a regular spotlight, nothing much, and you can see this shape is lit up by the light, and I can move that around and just point it at the object. And you'll see different areas of the object lighting up with it, and that will produce shadows, of course, because that's how lights work. And in the shape itself there are material options, so you can choose whether to cast shadows, accept lights or not. So if you want a certain object to not light up at all, it will not be affected by lights and just stay one straight colour, that's how you do it. You can increase the amount of ambient, but we don't have an ambient light in the scene, so we don't have to worry about that. Diffuse changes just how much the light actually affects it, and with no diffusion, no light. With more diffusion, more light, apart from if you've got ambient light, because that's different. And let's just close all of that off. That is pretty much the basics, like the real basics of the 3D in here. You could probably come up with your own ideas just from that. So let's delete all that and actually start working on our first After Effects model, which will be animated soon, but first of all we need to model it. So this is going to be a phone. So I'm basing this off of my own phone, which is a Galaxy A70. I'm not making the case, of course. So if I'll take my case off here, it looks like this. This is the phone we're going to be creating, except we're going to make our own touches to it because that's what we do. I'm going to start by creating a rounded rectangle because this phone is not square, it is rounded square. Ooh. And I'm just going to follow this based on the aspect ratio of my phone, which is 9 by 20, because that's the aspect ratio of my phone. I'm just going to scale it up, and if you do that with your phone's aspect ratio, let's say you've got a 16 by 9 phone, if you just put the vertical aspect and the horizontal aspect, it will just create a perfect display map of your phone. And because mine's got no bezels, this isn't really much of a bother. If you're going to add bezels, you can probably figure that out on your own. It's not much different to if you're just normally designing the phone. And this phone is a black, but I'm going to use a very dark grey for this, just so that it is visible. However, I obviously could use transparency, but... And once again, we'll set it as 3D, and we'll just do some basic adjustments in here. So if I increase my geometry extrusion depth, I have never seen a phone that thin. My phone has rounded corners, or rounded edges even. If you can see, it rounds around. So we'll do that too. So with that, we do a convex bevel. And you can't really see it here, but what it's done is it has rounded these edges, like I said. So if I put this in full quality, you'll be able to see it better. There we go. See the little bits of rounding? That's what you get from that. That's what you get from beveling even. And I'd say that is about what my phone's like. In fact, working with the light is probably going to make this a lot easier for depth perception, so I'll put that back because that's useful to have. I'll just zoom that out. And I'll just create an ambient light as well. So an ambient light is kind of a similar premise. You put it in, except this time you can't really map where it is because it's an ambient light. It affects the entire scene. So as long as an object can be affected by an ambient light, it will be affected by an ambient light. So this makes things much, much clearer. So first things first, let's work on the front of the phone, the display. That is pretty easy. Let's create a composition, and let's use the same resolution as our shape layer. So in my case, it is 441 by 980. So 441, 980. That's my phone screen, and let's just add just a basic background for now, so that I've got a decent idea of where we're going with it. 45, 50. And I'll just put this as a black fill. So you can put whatever you want on the phone screen. It could even just be a screenshot of your phone. I'm just using it so we have a reference. You could even just put this as black, but like I say, I want reference. And here's our composition 2, which is our phone screen. You can name that if you feel like organizing your project, but I don't. And I'm going to put this back over here because now I'm going to use... Oh, they moved it. I'm not used to this. Ah yes, we're going to use left. So there's different preset modes. So active camera is the camera that's being rendered. However, you also have default, front, and all sorts of orientations, and custom views, which kind of show like almost isometric different angles that kind of make it easier to deal with depth perception. And you can also create a camera from 3D view, but I haven't tried that out yet, so I wouldn't suggest using that. For now, we're just going to use left, like I say. So by default, it's already kind of put it in front of the phone, so I'm just going to shimmy that a bit to the right, and go back into my active camera, and oh look, there's the phone screen. There is still some beveling, so you could add the notch, for instance, which I may as well. Just draw a little circle at the top. This won't be any good, just saying. This is going to be a very basic notch because we can add details later on. This is just setting up the phone. So there it is. Let's scale it down just a tiny bit so there's a bit of an outlining around the display. And now I am going to actually make it easier for us to view around the camera. So create a null object and our camera. So you can change any of these settings if you want, like the zoom, but default settings are fine. And you can attach your camera to the null using the pick whip tool. So if you don't know what this does, it kind of just links things together. So for example, I could link positions with another object's positions, but in this case, we're linking it straight to the object. So anything that happens in the null happens to the camera. And you can see that happening there. So now if I rotate it, this camera will orbit around the phone, like that. I'm going to use quarter quality preview just because it's easier on my computer, and it probably will be easier on yours too, so I do recommend that. And yep, there you go, you can see it being a phone with a display. You can add a little bit of brightness of the display in the composition, so you know it's distinctive of a display. I am going to open up the material options and just turn on reflections for now, and make it have full reflection sharpness, because obviously the display is going to be pretty reflective. You're not going to see much blurring in it, so that's more than enough. And I'll probably increase the diffuse a bit, and that should do. That's our display. Now we can move around to the back of the phone. I'll just rotate this around because I may as well instead of using the back point. Because the thing is, with these preset views, they don't work the same as a normal viewport, because normally it would just point in a certain direction, that would be the camera. These go in orthographic, meaning everything in that plane gets flattened. So that's only good if you're trying to position things. Don't ever try and preview in those modes, because things are probably going to get quite ugly, being, you know, isometric, orthographic. And let's just create our cameras. So over here I will just create a similar camera bump to my phone. So my phone has 3 cameras. You can do this depending on how many cameras you've got. It's quite rounded, so I'm using rounded corner tool for that. And I'm just going to create this in a light grey so it's easier to see for the time being. I'd say that matches my phone, because it's a bit smaller, and then just a bit thinner. Yep, that's similar enough to my phone. You can, like I say, put it anywhere your phone is. It's a bit small though, so I will just increase the scale a bit. And now let's make it pop out from the phone, because naturally a camera bump is going to be a camera bump. It's going to pop out the phone. But first we need to turn it into a 3D object, and oh, it's disappeared. Why? Well, because it's gone for its default position. We need to actually enable left to this so that we can see whereabouts it is in depth. So like I say, it's good for positioning. So we want to position it all the way to the back of the phone, which is over here. And now when I enable my active camera, I just increase it a bit because I couldn't really see the light. There we go. It's there, and it's on the opposite side because it's on the back of the phone, so we'll just move it along. Here's the cool thing, arrow keys aren't very literal in this 3D viewport. It just kind of moves it to the left and right, making adjustments really, really easy if you actually rotate it to the right part of the phone. And that is our camera on the back. We should extrude it now, so I'll set my Y rotation to a point where we can see it from the side, like this. And once again, geometry options. This you're probably going to see a lot when it comes to anything in 3D. Geometry options, extrude, bada bing, bada boom. It's extruded. But yeah, there we go, we can kind of see the extrusion on the side there. The thing about camera bumps on phones, however, is there's like an outline around them. Specifically on mine there is, so to do that all you need to do is just add a stroke. That's really it. So that stroke can be a lighter part of it, and that's what we'll do here. So we'll do this in the grey, and then the actual camera itself is going to be black. I think I'm going to reduce the extrusion depth a little bit. It's not that big of a camera bump, you know. And there we go. That is our camera bump. Let's add our logo on the back, because I don't know about you, I've got a logo. So let me import that real quick. There we go. Our logo is imported. You would have had to do some crazy magic to get that in. I'm very good at magic. And now, if I go back to the back of the phone and once again go into 3D, scale my logo down because it doesn't need to be that high quality. I mean, come on. Phone's not that good. And I'll just copy our camera bumps position on the z-axis. There we go. And let's put that to a good scale. So I'd say a good scale for this is a bit there. And a lot of phones will have the logo like up here. So we'll do a bit of that. I'd say 440 is a decent enough position. Like on my phone, Samsung logo right there above it. I hear they're moving it to the bottom on my newer phones, like the A72, so pick your poison. And now let's add a flashlight. For this, I'm just going to make a very, very basic flashlight, nothing special. So on mine, it is literally just a circle with, obviously, a flashlight. And let's get a similar kind of yellow tinted flashlight, similar sort of, you know, yellow, maybe more on the orange side. And I'm just gonna add maybe a CC light sweep. I don't know if that can actually work in 3D. It can't. Yeah, I forgot to mention that some effects just don't work in 3D point blank, which is unfortunate. It really is, but it is what it is. And let's go find the same sort of Z position. There we go, and I'll just scale that down just a little bit. And put it underneath my camera bump like that. And on my phone it is just a little bit smaller than the camera bump, so I'll go for 3.5 sort of size. You don't have to be all too specific. It's a flashlight. You know. You can add a texture to it using, I don't know, an actual flashlight texture or something, but I'm not gonna do that for the time being until we've actually got a good looking phone for the time being. And rotating around, looks like the base of our phone is done. There is one thing you might have noticed, the anchor point isn't centered. And that's because it's based on the actual depth of the phone. So if I open this back up again, we have an extrusion depth of 13, and that goes all the way up to 35 or 33 on these, which means if I go to my top view, where we can see the top of the phone and that, we can set our null anchor point, and we'll just do -33/2 because it's obviously opposing the camera's position. And now if I go back to my active camera, it will now orbit around the right point. It's a very similar procedure if you're just trying to change the phone itself, but for previewing just a model, this is all you really need to do. You just orbit the entire camera around the scene. However, you can individually move the model by instead linking everything to this null one. So that, and that are all parts of the phone, and we'll just whip that to the null, and once again it rotates around, and now the lights aren't moving around as well. And here's something else. Images specifically have this problem of glitching out when they're inside another object, but that's okay, we can remedy that by just adding a little 0.1 nudge to it. There we go. And I think, considering how my logo is white, we should darken it a little bit, or at least use some opacity so that it blends in with the phone. And there we go. That looks like a very good prototype for our model. Now we can get to really detailing it. Obviously, we need to sort out the anchor point again because we stopped using camera. Anchor point to 0. Active camera. There we go. See, we would use move anchor point for that, but it's a bit not working in 3D. I've got to say, it's not great. And yep, looks like a phone to me. I am going to load in a texture for our cameras, so you know, because we obviously need some cameras instead of a black void. And just like that, our image is imported, and now I am going to put that above my null layer. I use Prism for organization as well. I'm just going to use that as my image here. So this is just the lens image that I've gotten off Google. You can use anything really. You could even go as far as detailing individual cameras to look different as if on an actual phone, because no cameras are going to look the same. And once again, same process, put it in 3D, put it to the right depth, and since it's going to be added onto the extrusion of our camera bump, we need to figure out that plus the extrusion depth. So the extrusion depth is 6, and its 3D position is, I can't see, 16.5 plus 6, that is something. Oh wait, no, it's backwards. There we go. Just needs a little bit of a nudge. There we go. scale that down a little bit. And obviously since it's inside the glass, it would probably be a bit darker than this very, very vivid photo. So I'll just saturate it a bit using key saturation and darken it. There we go, now it looks a bit more like it's actually a part of the phone's camera setup. And I'll just duplicate. And let's change my position by about plus 70. There. And I'll just put plus 70 on this one again. And that's 3 cameras on the back of the phone. It's as simple as that, really. There's nothing else we need to do there. Unless you wanted to go into major detail and no, create your own lens in After Effects. Oh, we're not doing that. It's not a lens tutorial. It's a basic 3D phone tutorial. And yeah, don't rotate your null yet, because we still need to pick whip those on, so these new images need to get pick whipped on. This is the thing you want to look out for, otherwise your scene gets completely messed up. That's a phone. Looks like a phone to me. I'd say that's a phone if I saw it. And now we can change some attributes about the camera setup in general. So I'm going to open up this, go into material options, and increase our reflection intensity to the max. And you'll see the ring around it gets a bit darker because now it's reflective. Actually, probably not the max because that's a bit much for a camera. I'd say about 50 because the camera lens isn't incredibly reflective. You can kind of see the glass. And with that, it will reflect objects around the scene, although there's nothing in the scene for it to reflect, so you can't really see that. But it is reflecting things. You could even go and change the diffuse, just so that it's a bit more intense when light puts on it, like the specular intensity and specular shininess. So now, if a light goes near it, it will react a lot stronger than other elements of the scene. And we can also do the same thing on the back of the phone. So if you had a metal phone, you could once again go into the material options, increase the reflectiveness, and now your phone's all shiny. But I can't really simulate this rainbow shiny effect without presumably magic or just using Blender. So instead I'll just leave it like this as the grey phone that it is. And you could even go as far as changing the logo specifically to be reflective, because guess what? PNGs can also take material effects. So once again, material options. I'll increase my reflection intensity to about 75 on this. I want this to be nice and metallic. Oh, and it's gone darker than the phone. Let's just brighten that up a bit. So it's a bit more of a silver now. And now that can rotate around. Like so. And that's the modeling of our phone. That leaves this episode here. In the next episode, we're going to be animating this phone by doing all kinds of things. It's going to rotate around, we can move it around in 3D space, and maybe even attach certain parts of the phone for all kinds of animations. And then we'll be placing it in a scene for it to work with, where you can actually see those reflective effects in action. So, thanks for watching this video. See you next one.